Double Dribble! Double Dribble! Double Dribble was released in the arcade by Konami in 1986, and it's notable because it's one of the first realistic-looking sports games that would come out.
Back in the day, it seemed like there was not an arcade across this fair country without a double dribble machine in it.
Double dribble, which is something you don't want to do in basketball, is actually called exciting basket in Japan. I think it sounds better.
It had really cool animations that featured the players doing slam dunks, which was awesome.
It was interesting to see those kind of cutaways in the middle of an action gameplay.
Half the time you won't make the dunk somehow, but they put them in the game.
The character's skin tone would change from white to black, and back and forth. If you had them selected when it happened, it'd go back and forth from white to black, and it would be this like weird strobe effect.
There's actually spots in the game where you can always make the shot.
The game was really learning about the sweet spots on the court. There were several hot spots where you could actually get more points and get your three-pointers in there.
There was some sort of like weird like non-physics world going on in Double Dribble, so if you jump from the bottom of the screen of three-point line, you can jump all the way, and in video game terms that was only like 2 feet because you can just do a layup for a three-pointer.
The game is also notorious because it's the first video game to feature the United States national anthem in the game.
Why would you name a basketball game after an illegal move? It's like I don't know, out of bounds, you know?
Why they should have called it like...
It's like penalty.
While the game was successful in the arcades, it got most of its notoriety with its release on the Nintendo Entertainment System.
It looked great, it was great for the time, it was a fun Konami sports title, good graphics, good sounds, and the great voice samples. I give Double Dribble 2 balls up. What?
Defender of the Crown was created by Kellen Beck, and it was the first release by Cinemaware.
The game is set in England in the Middle Ages where different factions are fighting over territorial control.
Defender of the Crown was released in '86 for the Commodore Amiga, and it was a beautiful game.
And it floored people because no one had ever really seen computer game graphics like this before.
This was Cinemaware's first game, and they ended up setting the new graphics standard for computer games.
Cinemaware was called Cinemaware for a reason. These were some of the first like true cinematic type games that you saw on a computer.
If not the first, one of the first in what has become kind of a staple of the PC gaming scene, and that is medieval like strategy.
You were trying to gain territories, amass armies.
There's just so much to it that you didn't see in other video games prior that were very straightforward in their focus.
In addition to strategic battles, you could also have jousting matches that looked really good.
Prior strategy games were strategy and nothing but. This had arcade type sequences, yeah. This had strategy sequences.
Game designer Bob Lindstrom said the first time he saw it, they knew that the stakes had been raised.
There were certain things in Defender of the Crown that unfortunately never made it into the Amiga version, like flaming fireballs for the catapults and whatnot that they did end up putting into the IBM compatible versions. But those did not look nearly as nice as the Amiga versions did. But all around, you know, all the versions were very playable.
Defender of the Crown is truly a gorgeous game for the time that I would never play.
Found its niche, it found its home in the PC realm, and here's where it begins.
Side Pocket is interesting because it's really the first billiards video game.
Super Mario Brothers, no, that's not exciting. I want to play pool.
You had an overhead perspective, and you were basically looking at a pool table.
You're shooting balls into pockets, and you have to put them in the proper order in order to get enough points to move on to the next round. Sounds easy, but it's tough, and they use pretty good geometry and physics in this game.
Side Pocket was really highly regarded as a realistic pool game that went above and beyond just a realistic pool game. It had all these other features and stuff about it.
You were able to see a guideline with a series of dots that would show you basically the geometry in which the ball would be traveling.
You choose the spin on the ball, you choose the power of the shot, and you aim the shot.
You know, when you think of any kind of billiard simulation game, this is the game. And it was successful in the arcades because of that. You didn't see a lot of games like this.
Balloon Fight on the NES. Classic game. One of the original black box games.
A Joust clone, but it's better. Why? Because you are a dude with a fake beak and balloons strapped to your back.
You have to tap the buttons really quickly to get your guy to flap his arms so he can gain altitude.
And you need to stomp on your enemies and clear the enemies on the screen, on a single screen.
You die if you lose both your balloons, you get hit by lightning, like a ball of lightning bouncing around the screen.
And watch out for the fish, because of course he's going to come up and eat you whole.
Yes, that's what fish do.
Really tight play control, really pleasing, you know, physics to how you move through the air and how you floated.
An adorable take on a game that had already been done, but the new coat of paint really did make Balloon Fight, at least to me, something special.
Yeah, this is part of the Nintendoification of video games. It's cute and it's accessible and it's colorful and it's fun.
There was a second game on the cartridge that was a single player game called Balloon Trip. And I actually liked this one quite a bit.
It's just an obstacle course and it's a test of your will and your sanity to get through this thing.
Balloon Trip is kind of one of the earliest examples of what's known as like an endless runner. You're constantly forced to scroll and just avoid obstacles.
The goal is essentially just to see how far you can get, but it's incredibly addicting and actually the part of the game I always liked the most.
Two-player simultaneous mode is really fun on Balloon Fight. You could screw up your partner very easily because there's not a whole lot of room to be going on the level.
It's a test for real men. Real men who love balloons.
It's Balloon Fight. Balloon Fight is so much fun. I'm floating with helium.
Is this a musical now?
John D presents the Video Game Babes of 1986.
This is John D with the Video Game Babes of 1986. Lizzie the Lizard. Prehistoric Monster Babe. The Girl from Outrun. The babe that should probably be wearing a helmet. Samantha Fox from Samantha Fox Strip Poker on the Commodore 64. The British pop star babe. Don't play this game. Don't play it. Michelle Hart from Legendary Wings. The shooting winged babe. And Tubbs and Crockett from Miami Vice on the Commodore 64. The pastel dude babes. And those were the Video Game Babes of 1986. And I got a blank space, baby. And I'll write your name.
Life Force, or Salamander in Japan, is a vertical and horizontal scrolling shooter.
It was a spin-off to Gradius, or Gradius, however you want to say it.
You know, you don't just have your horizontal stages, you got your vertical stages and it switches up, which is, you know, switching up is fun.
It turns everything on its head. Whereas Gradius was a space-based shooter, Life Force actually has you fighting through a number of living environments.
You're inside this giant alien life form. So there would be text at the beginning of the stage being like, entering like the stomach muscle area or something like that.
You have the same kind of ship from, you know, Gradius, the Vic Viper.
And player 2 controls Lord British.
I don't know if someone was a fan of the Ultima series, but well, it was Japan, so I'm sure there were fans of the Ultima series there at the time. The Lord British, or because of the wonky English that goes on, sometimes known as the Road British.
Needs to be played up front instead of far back. All of your important decisions in terms of paths that you take and things that you need to dodge are done a lot earlier than they are in most shooters, which is unique, and I still think it makes Life Force a fairly unique shooter. Hanging back and taking on the waves like you would even in its predecessor is going to do nothing but get you trapped or killed very quickly.
Life Force had some really cool bosses, like Brain Golem, which is a brain with an eye sticking out the front of it. That gave me freaking nightmares.
Thankfully, on the NES version of Life Force, you can use the Konami code for 30 lives, or else no one would ever beat the damn game. So that's the only way I could beat it. But yeah, it's a fun shooter.
It continued to show Konami's relevance in the world of shmups and continued to move the genre forward.
Man, you know what I love? Simple, single-screen, top-down racing games. And Super Sprint is one of the purest and most fun.
You see the entire track, and you're essentially controlling your vehicle much like you would control any kind of radio-controlled car or RC car.
Super Sprint is one of those games that I have difficulty controlling because the controls are relative to where the car is, just like in Off-Road RC Pro-Am and Resident Evil.
You go around the racetrack with the curbs, pick up the wrenches so you can upgrade your vehicle, don't smash to the side. That's Super Sprint. That's what you do.
There were obstacles on the track like oil spills, of course, and tornadoes. Call the race off. This is a tornado. You don't drive around it.
It spawned a whole bunch of copycat games that added more, and while some of them were definitely great games, I really feel like Super Sprint just kind of nailed it on the first try.
Should have retired.
Yeah.
Retired at the sprint, Super Sprint, that's it.
Go out at the top.
Space Quest! I'm in space!
So at Sierra, 1986, they're starting to get some appreciation. You know, they're starting to put out these King's Quest games and they're getting popular.
At the time, Sierra was making serious medieval games, and Scott Murphy and Mark Crow wanted to make something fun.
And they kind of came up with this idea for Space Quest, where you would play as a janitor.
Roger Wilco, a space janitor. In space.
Roger Wilco campaigns through the galaxy for truth, justice, and really clean floors.
The iconic Roger Wilco character, humorously, wasn't ever really supposed to be his name. That was the default name that they put in when it asks you at the computer, what is your name? Roger will comply. And most people left it, so in later versions of the game, it became the main character's name.
Roger Wilco is a loser underdog who saves the universe, sometimes accidentally, and gets punished for it. He's seriously an underdog.
You want to experiment and see the humorous ways that you can kill Roger.
Even if you were frustrated, even if you were getting killed multiple times, like I said earlier, the funny messages you would get upon death were sort of worth it.
When you're playing King's Quest, all you want to do is beat King's Quest. When you're playing Space Quest, yeah, you want to beat Space Quest, but you want to see all the other weird stuff that you can do just by experimentation.
It was one of the first games to be installable on the hard disk. It was one of the first games to have drop-down menus, which definitely made the whole puttering around and trying to do stuff a little more palatable.
The game became a quick success and they sold over 100,000 copies.
This was the start of a very successful run for Sierra, a 6-game series, almost paralleling King's Quest, which was the engine it was based on. And then right before Leisure Suit Larry and Police Quest, basically the 4 Quest series. And I love Space Quest. It's my favorite computer game series probably of all time.
It just continued to show that the adventure game genre could move past simply the medieval times and the Knights of King Arthur's court sort of setting and actually move into the space realm as well, with some humor tied into it. $720. Skateboarding in the 80s was a huge thing, and Atari really jumped on board trying to gain some of that.
The joystick is interesting because most people don't know, it's almost like a crank. It doesn't, it rotates in a circle.
The name 720 comes from the trick of doing 2 full spins, 2 full turns.
You had to be awesome to do a 720.
It actually required really jamming that controller around.
You got to really take a jump off of one of the course ramps in order to do one of those moves.
There's a main map area where you choose which park you want to go to, and you have to have a certain number of points to get a ticket to go into the park.
There's slalom, downhill, ramp, and jump courses.
There's also shops that you go to buy different accessories like a helmet or something like that to make you better.
It's got a unique time structure that requires the player to keep accumulating points in order to keep the game going.
Not only are you timed during events, you're timed between events. And if you take too long before you get to the next event, killer bees. You get attacked by killer bees.
Just like real skateboarding. Yeah, bees hate skateboarders. It's apparently general knowledge.
When your time started running low, there was a phrase that came across the screen that is very memorable in this game. It would say, skate or die!
If that sounds familiar, that was the influence for the game, Skate or Die.
The cabinet was awesome. The speakers were mounted on the top. They look like a boombox.
This is the game that taught Tony Hawk how to skateboard.
Its legacy is huge, and its innovation in terms of arcade design is unquestionable.
And now the forgotten video games of 1986.
At here with the forgotten video games of 1986. Gremlins for the 5200. Prevent Mogwais from eating burgers in this movie adaptation by Atari. The Goonies by Konami. Enter the movie world and battle the Fratelli family in this arcade adventure. Leather Goddesses of Phobos. Infocom's kinky text adventure. And Chubby Cherub for the NES. Bandai's cute but frustrating shooter. Those were the forgotten video games of 1986. Just because you don't remember them doesn't mean they weren't fun.